What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we dive into day number 23 of our free-to-play challenge here in MTG Arena. Yesterday, we ended up doing our standard event. We ended up also having 1,725 gold left over as currency. We didn't do so well in the standard event and only ended up getting like something like 80 gems or whatever the two-win victory is. But we still actually have a lot of ways we can definitely earn some money today here in MTG Arena and definitely get into possibly another standard event if we want to, or we can save up our currency and maybe spend it on a quick draft or even possibly a premium draft if we want to do something like that. It's definitely one of those things as we kind of get towards the tail end of the challenge where, everything I'm doing here is just additive. It's just various ways that you can farm additional currency, especially converting your gems into gold. The other thing that's special about today as I'm recording, I kind of already posted this afternoon, earlier this afternoon, that if you're seeing this on the day I recorded it, I've already posted it in my community tab. But in the store today for the daily deals, we actually do have our gem exchange here, where you can take either 10 golds or 10 gems or 50 gold and exchange it up for 550 gold. And because, I feel like it makes the most sense to kind of make sure we maximize the amount of gold. And we can easily earn this 10 gems back by playing the standard event or even participating in a quick draft. I'm actually going to spend gems here just because 10's not that big of a deal, I think, to lose in this point, because 10, we're not really close to really getting a mastery pass, and we're not really, going to buy anything else. So I think spending 10 gems is definitely the way to go here, as it'll give us a big boost to gold, and now we have 2,275. So we're definitely in a good spot here, as well as, like I said, we already have some pretty decent daily quests. We have our quest here for 750 that we're just literally about 9 spells away from completing. And then we also have the one for today, which is we can play red or black spells and, get 500 gold. And I'm actually going to reroll this one and kind of just see what we get. Though I could complete this with our Rakdos anvil deck if I wanted to, but I'm going to reroll it and just kind of see what happens. And this one is cast 20 creature spells and you get 500 gold. So definitely pretty awesome there. And pretty much now what I want to do here in today's video is I'll probably dive into a couple regular standard games, depending on how many wins we get and if we complete this pretty quickly. Maybe after those couple standard games, I'll jump into a standard event. I'll play that out. And I will probably just kind of clip the games into the video here, just because I like to kind of switch it up every now and then. As much as I would love to do all super long videos, I think it's a good balance of doing some shorter videos, where typically these videos are like 10-15 minutes at most, and then the longer videos where maybe if I want to do a deep dive into the games themselves or even like draft, I can sit back and actually explain a lot of the stuff that happens. But if anything interesting happens, maybe I will add that in as some additive commentary if there's something that's interesting, or maybe there was a close game that I ended up pulling out or just lost. Maybe I'll add some commentary there. But that being said, I'm going to dive into some games. I'm going to, hopefully complete some daily quests, get some daily wins, maybe get up a couple additional points in our overall ranking here at MTG Arena on our free-to-play account, as we are platinum in both our limited and our constructed, which is definitely awesome. So any additional ranks there, though I believe every win now from this point forward is now only 1 point, whereas prior in gold you get 2. So the more we win, the better we do. So if we can at least be 65% benefit, will be at least a step forward in our overall rank when it comes to playing ladder. With that out of the way, like I said, we're gonna dive into some games, gonna see how we do, and then after that we'll see how much gold I have, and maybe I'll dive into a standard event and also post it here in today's video. So this next game up is definitely an interesting game overall. This is another game that was very close. I think this was our last win in the event. But it was against a very interesting deck. I think it's Esper aggro, I think is what we were playing against. But we draw a very strong hand, I think, because we have Hopeful Initiate. Valor Stance isn't the greatest in this position, but we have a Brutal Cathar and Thunder Raiju, and we also have a Curve of 3, which is definitely very good. So definitely a very good open in hand to have, for our deck. The hope is maybe we draw a turn 2 play, like one of our, Bloodthirsty Adversaries, so we now have a Haster to grow our Hopeful Initiate. They play a tap land, not great for us. We play red. We play our other Hopeful Initiate after on second main phase. And this is the problem because they are playing Esper, is that we have to watch out for some sort of board wipe effects, which is definitely one of those things that is something that can happen in this position. It's going to take at least into turn 4 with our current board state, but we really need a creature that's going to help grow our Hopeful Initiates, because that makes our, our creatures too big for, like, say, like a Meat Hook Massacre at this point. They play Ledger Shredder, so definitely, they're setting themselves up for a very good overall curve. We play Brutal Cathar just to get their Ledger Shredder out of the way. It grows, it does. If it stays on the battlefield next turn, it will grow our board. If it doesn't, it's unfortunate. We also have a third white source, which is not great. We want that second red so we can play Thunder Raiju just to grow our creatures. And then they have to make a play here. They either play like a Shredder. They could play the Legend that connives. They can play spot removal here, but then they only have 1 mana open, so it's definitely sets them up for interesting a play here, because they're probably not going to use their mana efficiently. So it's definitely interesting what they want to do here overall. The one thing is they don't want to do is they don't want to go to Knight, because it would make them take life in order to get rid of the Moonrage Brute, which is definitely very interesting, and they decided to do it. But you'll find this to be interesting just based on what they have. The other thing too is, in the back of my head, I don't know why, I probably should have smashed the Thunder Raiju here, because it will allow me to even be more aggressive and actually do damage to them a lot more. And for some reason, I decided not to play Thunder Raiju. I think there was a part of me that was like, maybe they're just bluffing and they have like a Jawari or something. I don't want to actually tap out to actually cast it and then get countered and then lose my Thunder Raiju. And then they just remove my, Moonrage Brute regardless. So they do, which is definitely unfortunate because they pay the 3 life. They're now at 14. And now they get their Ledger Shredder back. And we still swing in because it's not like their Ledger Shredder is going to kill us. Unless they have something like Consider and grow it, is really the only thing that they would have, or some way to just grow it in general so they can block it. So now they're on turn 4. They get a land that comes in battlefield tap, though they gain a life. So definitely, yet again, if I play Thunder Raiju, they're definitely at a much lower life total. They're probably at like in the single digits, which is definitely a lot of pressure that, we would want to put them in. And then on that last turn, they probably would have thought, one way or the other, what they wanted to do. And they play a Tolez, the Clever Conductor, which connives. Whenever they connive and discard a card, they put it underneath the Tolez. So definitely, a good card. It is a 4/2, so definitely blocks what we have on the battlefield. We think about it for a second, we're thinking like Bloodthirsty Adversary, but you know what? Let's play Thunder Raiju because it will trade either way. We'll grow it to a 4 just to make sure. And it'll grow our Hopeful Initiates as well. And we'll also ping them for 2 points of damage, so they're at 12. Yet again, one of those things I probably, if I would have played a turn earlier, our Hopeful Initiates now would have been 3/4s go along with the Thunder Raiju, but because I didn't play Thunder Raiju, it dies in this process, which is definitely, I'm now behind essentially in value. And it just shows you, like, if I didn't tap out or tapped out, it'd probably be in a different game, or they would have been in a different position at this point. Now they have 5 mana. And, when you have access to black mana, there's always a card that is probably the card you don't want to see here. But the one thing is, in the process, they will have to lose their Ledger Shredder. And they attack him for 1, which makes it seem like they have some sort of board wipe or removal. Just because, why would you attack in if you know I'm going to attack you back for 4 next turn? You're already at a low life total. And they play Meat Hook Massacre. So 3 across the board, everything dies. We get drained for a point of life, and they gain 2 life, so we're back up to 12. We play Ascendant Spirit and Luminarch. And I think about it for a second because I'm like, do I tap out for a Bloodthirsty, make it a 3/3, or do I play a Bloodthirsty, play a Luminarch Aspirant, get some board presence? The only problem is if we get board wiped again, like they follow up with another Meat Hook Massacre, we're going to lose a lot. But I'm like, you know what? I feel like at this point I was already like, if the next loss, whatever happens, I'm going to lose. Might as well just try my best to put as much pressure on them and maybe make them waste a removal this again, because that would be their turn yet again, because that would, unless they get an additional land, they would tap literally all their mana they currently have on the battlefield. They have, they have a lot of land. Also, it's possible they could have some other board wipe effects because it is Esper. Even though they play creatures, there's still board wipes in an Esper deck because it's not like full aggro, it's more like a mid-range deck. So it's definitely one of those things where we're just kind of like thinking about, I guess they're thinking about what they want to do. Maybe they have a couple options in hand. They can go out right up and just cast their their draw 2, scry 2 kind of thing. But they also have other things in their hand as well. And they play Kaito. I guess that's to get a blocker, because I guess they know we're gonna attack in. And maybe they don't currently have a board wipe that they want to do, which is definitely good for us, because that puts a lot of that puts more pressure on them to have that kind of board removal. And they're still thinking, because I guess they're thinking about what do they want to do here. They have 3 mana open. Do I have a play, or do they have a play to like kind of use that 3 mana? Maybe they have another Kaido. Definitely interesting here. I guess they're thinking about whether or not they want to foretell their draw a card. And then there's just 2 mystery cards and a foretell card. But they decide to say go. Or they at least pass through their attack phase, and then they say go. And then it's our turn again. And I don't want to overextend, because a part of me wants to actually play the other Bloodthirsty, put even more pressure on them. But I'm going to also spread the wealth here. A part of me also could have just kept on putting the counters on the Bloodthirsty and just attacking with that. Just because, again, every time they meet hook, if we are Bloodthirsty's higher, like a 4/4 or higher, that means they can just go ahead and they have to tap a lot of mana to actually exile it. But, there's no Wandering Emperor in this position. We're able to attack him for 5. They have to block, that puts them to 4 if they don't. Definitely in an awkward position. And we yet again, we have mana open. So it's like, what do we have? And they vanish inverse, no big deal. And I believe they also block. This is where Valor Stance feels a little awkward, because you have Valor Stance, and like you could have, if it was a destroy spell, you could have saved it, and it's a lot different position. But they block. We get drained for 1. We're at 17. They're still at 9. We flip to Knight. Yet again, we're still definitely ahead, but they have cards that can get them value, and they decide to draw and discard, which is definitely very interesting in this position. They discard a land because now they're looking for like answers to kind of answer our board. And my assumption is either they top deck the Wandering Emperor, or they had it in their hand and just didn't have the mana last turn to play it. So it's definitely one of those things, and it looks like they're just going to exile it, gain 2 life in the process. So definitely, one of those things. Also, at the same time too, if that was all their play last turn, if you really think about it, they probably should have let us be the aggressor, and maybe foretell their draw card and just leave up Wandering Emperor and kind of wait and see what we do. Because what if we have a bigger creature like a Thunder Raiju or something that can attack him more aggressively, and they just got rid of a 3/3? Thunder Raiju is definitely a creature that gets bigger and bigger. So it's definitely kind of an interesting position to just kind of play Wandering Emperor and just kind of snap exile on your turn, even though it has flash ability. Definitely one of those things that you always want to like think about. But we get rid of the Kaido, because the Wandering Emperor, as much as it does remove creatures, it's down to 1. And the only thing it can do here is either remove creatures, or it can make a 1/1, but they would have to lose it. And in this position, they don't have any creatures on the battlefield, so they're not going to put a +1/+1 counter or anything. They have another Kaido. That's good for them, because they have another Kaido. They can make another creature. It phases out yet again. And now they have a target at least for their +1/+1 counter. But yet again, they only have 2 cards in hand, and they can't actually play their draw card unless that other card in their hand is a land. So definitely a good spot for them. Now their 1/1's now a 2/2. It has first strike, but it's more at this point a blocker, just because they are behind. And in a weird spot here, we have 6 lands. One of them is a Den of the Bugbear. And they played a lot of their removal already, like their spot removal. So they play Behold the Multiverse. Good for us. They have only 1 mana open. They keep both on top. They draw both, which is, it seems like they got 2 good cards, because they don't want to, mulligan them. They get another land, and then they follow that up with the Ledger Shredder. So definitely a good turn for them, right, overall, because they can block very well against our 3/3. The 2/2 blocks at 3/3. We're actually going to activate the Den of the Bugbear, because we still want to put the pressure on them, right? We can also get the 1/1 here, but it still puts a lot of pressure on their actual life total, and it possibly may make them consider whether or not they want to, block the 3/2, right, with their creature. We still have a mystery card. We're just going to attack all, just to kind of make sure we kill the Wandering Emperor, just because that's something that we want to get rid of. They block the Den of the Bugbear with their 2/2. We have a Valorous Stance that we've been holding this whole time that we can actually finally cast. we decided to give our Den of the Bugbear indestructible because at least this turn it survives, and now every turn afterwards we're just putting continuous pressure on our opponent. So even if they board wipe, we're not, falling behind because we still have a creature land to attack with, and they don't really have a way to disrupt our creature land at this point. They didn't draw like a Field of Ruin. They have 2 mystery cards we don't know, but it seems like they're being a little bit desperate just to kind of get rid of things on the battlefield, and we're still at 15, which is definitely, in these late game kind of situations, it's still a good life total to be at because they haven't really got rid of things on our battlefield. They wiped the board, which is definitely, unfortunate. And, they gain 2 life, so at 15, we're still at they're at 13, we're at 15. And this is kind of where it gets interesting, right? So I guess their thought process here was to get rid of the Kaido, or to get rid of the Wandering Emperor, because I believe they go ahead and they make a +1/+1 counter. Or actually, they draw first, which is definitely interesting here. And they get rid of like a board wipe, destroy all non-land permanents. We don't actually have any currently, so it's not a big card for them. It actually hurts them more than us. And they make a Samurai token, they get rid of their Wandering Emperor. So this is definitely a good position for us because now we're able to just kind of put pressure on them. Because now they have to have an answer for Thunder and Raiju, right? Because we can attack in with Thunder and Raiju. It's going to get bigger. We're going to force them to block it. And now it's a 4/4. So, if they chump block it, they have to protect their Kaido. They lose their creature. They could also have removal because they do have blue, white, and black mana open. So they definitely have, ways to remove this. We don't have any hands. So at this point, we are just kind of top decking and just putting pressure on them any way possible. And decide to, let Kaido go. Okay, interesting. So definitely they either have something to get rid of our Thunder Raiju, or maybe they wanted to keep the token out and be able to attack in with it. So they have Rafine. Definitely a good card for them because now they can connive, which essentially allows them to draw and discard as long as they have a card in hand. They can keep that card and get rid of something they don't want, like a land. And they draw. And they discard a land, I believe, which is definitely not a good card that they want to discard in this position just because it doesn't grow their 2/2 into a 3/3. So not putting as much pressure. They draw a Warp Wizard class, which is definitely an interesting card that you don't see a lot of, but definitely an interesting card just to have because they have, connive plus the third ability puts +1/+1 counters on things. So definitely an interesting interaction for them to do. They draw 2 cards, which refills their hand. We still have a lot of pressure on them because next turn we can activate their Den of the Bugbear. We can swing in essentially for 9 points of damage. And we also get a Brutal Cathar, which is definitely very strong. And I think about it for a second. It's like, do I slam the Brutal Cathar? Do I take a creature? And I'm like, you know what? Let's just put pressure on them. We'll keep the Brutal Cathar. We'll kind of keep that pressure going. And we swing in for a total of... we're swinging a total of 8 because I forgot that you put a +1/+1 counter on a Den of the Bugbear. It blocks, we can now block very well. Or they can, we're not going to kill anything other than our 1/1. They can sacrifice the 2/2. And they can take 8 if they don't block anything else, which is definitely very interesting in this position. And it seems like they really, really think about this block for a second. Going to 8 is definitely not a position you want to be in this deck, but though they're going to gain 1 because our creature's going to die, so they're technically going to go to 5. But it's definitely one of those things. I drew a card, but I didn't play it. I have mana open. What could I have? So definitely, a weird position to be in if I was the opponent to kind of let that. If we go to Knight, definitely another interesting position so our Brutal Cathar doesn't eat anything when it comes down the battlefield unless they double spell this turn. So definitely overall, pretty interesting spot for our opponent to be in. They kind of have to answer the Thunder Raiju just because, they're going to take the 1 point of damage from anything we put a +1/+1 counter on. Additionally, they swing it for 2. So they connive. Conniving is good in this position because, they want to draw. They want to find an answer. Not only for our Thunder Raiju, but also probably for our, our creature land that we're attacking with. It seems like they don't really have anything. They go to second main. Thinking about it. They can tap 5 and get to that additional copy of the Wizard class, which is something they probably should have done if they do it before they attack, just because that would grow their 2/2 to a 3/3. So yet again, very interesting overall. And I just checked, just double check what the word was just in case, Brutal Cathar comes out. They decide to, foretell a card, which is interesting. And then they tap out, which either means one of 2 things. It's either a board wipe or it's another card that draws them deeper into the deck. And they want to follow that up with another play. But definitely a very interesting turn for them. And we definitely, this is one of those positions we top deck our burn. Removal, our burn spell, which now we can swing in at them very aggressively, and we swing for 8. And we're also going to put another counter on our you know, Den of the Bugbear, or, you know, what doesn't really matter. It's going to be a wash either way. And we hit them for 1. And at this position, they can't really take 4 points of damage. They have to block both of the bigger creatures with both their creatures. So definitely, you know, a position that they don't want to be in. They're gonna hit for 1, and we draw the burn spell that we're just gonna, you know, burn them for the rest of the points of damage. But yet again, you know, it's definitely one of those things that we don't want to have happen. You know, we really grind them out, but it definitely, you know, it was something that we still drew powerful spells to kind of keep into the game, regardless of how much value they have with their deck. And I'm actually very surprised the deck performed as well as it did in that game, just because typically there's a point where the deck doesn't perform as good, but we were able to keep up. So definitely good for us, and that gets us to... All right, so this is the next game in the event, and, you know, we're on 2 wins. We're 2-2 right now. We want to get to that 3rd win, so at least finish 500. We draw a pretty okay hand. Nothing super great, but we get, you know, red mana. We can play Kamano. Don't really have a turn 2 play, which is unfortunate. Sometimes you could hold back Kamano, keep the white mana. I don't know. And maybe follow that up. But yet again, it still leaves us options open depending on what they do here. So we can always follow that up with a Royal Eruption if they play a strong turn 1 play. It looks like they're playing red as well, so it's possible they're playing the same deck. Not really sure here. And they play Experimental Synthesizer, which is not a card you want to play on turn 1 when the problem is you really can't follow that up, whatever you're going to get. And it looks like their Synthesizer got, you know, the Bloodthirsty Adversary, which is not Bloodthirsty Adversary. They got a Bloodtithe Harvester that ends up going to the bin, or it gets exiled with their Synthesizer, and that's not really a play you want to do on turn 1. Because really, whatever you get is just going to get exiled, and there's really not a point at that position. I would just not played anything if I was them. And we don't get a turn 2 play, but we're just going to follow that up. We're just going to do the 3 to their face, just put pressure on their mana, just in general. But we kind of have an idea that they're playing something with artifacts, or possibly even Rakdos in this position. So definitely we're in a good spot, I think. And they play black mana. Maybe that's what they were looking for. I don't really know. Definitely still a weird play. And they play Anvil, which is definitely good. And part of me was thinking, I'm hoping that they're not going to sacrifice their Synthesizer on this turn and lose another card, because that'd be very unfortunate just to get a 1/1. I don't think the payoff is definitely very good, especially when you lose like a Harvester, which makes blood tokens. And I think this is where they kind of think about it, or they actually don't realize they're on the trigger. That's the one problem with playing Anvil decks. If you're not paying attention, the game's going to stick every single time, because it is asking you, do you want to sacrifice to drain 1, gain 1, and possibly get an artifact? And they end up doing it, which is not, again, a play you want to make, because that's their only other artifact out currently. And if we get rid of their artifact, they now have to possibly either sack the Anvil, or they have to follow that up with an artifact play. So not the play I would want, and now they lose a land. It seems, yet again, it's a foolish play if I was them, just because it's not a play you would want to make with an Anvil deck. And then we're going to follow that up with a Brutal Cathar. We're going to eat their artifacts, and we're going to swing it for 2, and they're down to 15 now. So definitely, yet again, weird position. We have 2 removal spells. We have another white mana, so we're definitely good on land. We just need more spells to put more pressure on them, because they have 1 artifact on the battlefield, and they're an artifact deck, and that's not a position they want to be in. And they go ahead and play Voldaren Epicure. Great card. You know, it's a card that's going to, you know, allow them to get an artifact, deal 1 damage. They can now sacrifice that blood token to draw and or to the Anvil. I personally, at this position, maybe want to look for answers, just because, you know, you want to sacrifice a blood token, get value out of it, not to sacrifice it to gain some life. I think that's a better payoff, in my opinion. They're looking at a Brutal Cathar. They probably don't want us to flip it, so they Voltage Surge. Maybe want to hold off, you know, next time. I don't know. It seems like a little preemptive just to go ahead and Surge at that point, because you can do it instantly. Maybe want to see what I do on my turn. And we also then get a Bloodthirsty Adversary, which is definitely something I can do. They didn't sacrifice their artifact on their turn, so they didn't get an additional artifact out as a blocker. So we're just getting rid of their only obstacle in our way, just because it seems like the logical source at this point. There is some stick, yet again. It's probably because of Anvil for the blood token, or Anvil sacrifice in general. They can't, unless they have a Village Rites, they really can't sacrifice a creature here. They're going to time here because they already roped us a little bit. We played Bloodthirsty Adversary, which now we're going to swing it for 4. And they're not in a good spot yet again, because, you know, they don't have a creature to block with. They're going to drain for 1, possibly, if they sacrifice their blood token. But, you know, they're not really going to, you know, they're going to be at a low life total, right? We're putting a lot of pressure on them, and they don't really have a board state with their artifacts. So definitely in a weird position if I, you know, being the player that they, being this player. Now they have 4 lands and 3 cards in hand. Definitely it could be a different game if they would have, you know, probably not played Synthesizer so early. It's a good Meat Hook Massacre, great card. That's definitely a card they would want in that position, just because they're going to gain some life. They get rid of our creatures, so now the board state is definitely been, balanced. It's back in their favor, just because they now have Meat Hook Massacre. They also have the Blood Token. Yet again, we're definitely going to get some good top decks, and we got ourselves a nice Thunder and Raiju, which is definitely another good card to put pressure on them. We go ahead. It's now a 4/4. And now they only have 4 mana, so they can't Meat Hook it. It's now going to be bigger than a Meat Hook that can get cast. And we're just going to swing in for 4. And they think about it for a second. Yet again, they don't really have a good... They don't want to sacrifice their token on our turn because they want to get the creature out, so they at least have a chump blocker. They get a 5th land. Definitely, they only have 2 cards in hand. Not a lot of artifacts out. It's definitely a different game if they didn't play Synthesizer turn 1 to only have it die to lose their card in the process, which was actually a pretty good card for them. And they get a 1/1 here, and I guess it's definitely one of those things that they could think about. But they already got their trigger off of the anvil. So interesting play here, right? Personally, if I knew that I'm gonna block my creature this turn, if I was our player, and not to like bash on the player at all, this is more of a learning experience because they should really be in the advantage because they have Meat Hook, they have Anvil, and they have the draw effects. So we're kind of just top deck mode, and we have 1 card in hand. So if I was the opponent, I would have saved this draw spell until our turn, right? Because we're gonna attack in at their creature, and they're already gonna it's gonna die, right? You might as well get some value out of it before it dies, and might as well draw some cards with it. Because you're not doing anything with the treasure at this point because you can't sacrifice to get a token out of it. So there's no point in really, I think, digging at this point. So definitely one of those plays that they probably could have done a little bit differently if I was them, just save it until later. Yet again, I don't know. They sacrifice the token. They get a Warlock class. I understand it's a pretty good card for the deck, but not really doing anything with it at this point. So definitely a weird sequence of events. I get it. You want to get things on the battlefield. You want to, get the battlefield back in their hand. But we have a removal spell. And they can go ahead and they can sacrifice it now, and they can gain a life, and we're gonna lose a life, and we're actually gonna lose two life, which is not a big deal. But we're not gonna swing it for 5. So definitely a weird game state that I feel like they made a lot of misplays. But yet again, in this position, even though they're at 5. They can still draw very well to the point that, they can get themselves right back in this game. They Blood-typed Harvester. Definitely, can chump block here, worst case scenario. They have a lot of good cards on the battlefield. They can dig a little bit in their library, which is also another good thing here. Look for an answer. If they get something like a Voltage Surge, they can surge this, they can block, and then it dies, and they have creatures on the battlefield. They can also sacrifice a Blood Token here. Even though it doesn't gain them life, they can still dig a little bit deeper in the library. Okay, so they have another Deadly Dispute. See, that's the right play for Deadly Dispute, I think, of their opinion. Sacrifice a Blood Token to the Deadly Dispute to then get a token out of it. And now they have 2 mana. They have 2 blockers. They now tap out, essentially, other than their treasure token, to look at the top 3 cards of their library. They're going to add 1 to their hand, put the rest on the bottom of their library in any random order. And they get rid of 2 lands and get maybe something with value, unless it was all lands. I don't really know. So yet again, they're in a good spot here, regardless of what happens. They can chump block our Thunder Raiju as long as they can produce artifact tokens. Though their Harvester really can't, kill our Thunder Raiju. So definitely, an awkward spot for them. But they're definitely not out of this. Chump blocking with your 1/1, sacrifice your treasure next turn to cast something. This game is definitely not out of their favor. They definitely, they're the grindy deck. They want to grind out these life point totals a little bit by little bit. And they decide to skip through their turn just because I think that's all they have. We go ahead and combat. And we're going to swing for 6, right? So, I know our creature is definitely very big. They really can't kill it with, the Meat Hook Massacre. They really just need some sort of spot removal spell at this point. But yet again, they're not out of it, and they can just chump block it. It doesn't have trample. It's just a 6/6. That's just going to grow. And, the block is just block with your 1/1, sacrifice it, drain a life, gain a life. But they decided to pass and not block. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe they just didn't want to play against us, but we didn't really draw anything good. Though they don't know what we drew because we didn't play it. We could be just attacking, going to second main. and then playing it and then doing it that way. But technically, with our deck, we probably want to play our creature regardless of whatever happens on the first play, because we want to put that +1/+1 counter on the other creature and then at least ping them for a point of damage. But they decided to not block for some reason, and they decided to scoop or whatever and just take the damage. But yet again, they definitely were not out, right? They blocked the 6/6 with their 1/1. They sacrifice it in the process, before damage is dealt. Nullifies the attack. They drain us for 2 points of damage, or they drain us for 2 points of damage. They gain a life. They go next turn, right? They have, a harvester that can either attack in unless they don't have anything in their hand. They can hold it back as a chump blocker. They can, pay something with their treasure token, which then creates another 1/1. And, this is how the Rakdos Anvil deck is, regardless, unless you're in burn range. You really aren't out of the game to really, turn the game around, just because, a Meat Hook Massacre is a good drain. Anvil's a good drain. As long as you're producing artifacts, that's a good drain. If you have another Anvil, then you start producing more artifacts that you can sacrifice, and you start actually making more chump blockers, which kind of negates anything that doesn't have trample. But yet again, like I said, it seems weird that they scoop at that position, but we end up getting the win. And it's definitely, makes us feel good. And I was actually, at this point, when they didn't block, I was like, they didn't block? Kind of like, why? So it's definitely one of those weird spots where I'm like, maybe they just didn't want to, I guess they just wanted to get out of the game as quickly as possible. I don't know. It's just very weird, because Rakdos Anvil is not a deck that you just want to get to a few turns and just kind of scoop, because it's a grindy deck. I don't know. So we're at 3-2, definitely good for us. And I think this is not the last game. I think we have one more game, which is definitely good for us. So we go into game number 5 at this point. We draw a really good hand. This is the first time we've had actually a pretty decent hand. We only have 2 mana, but we definitely have a lot of playables, which is definitely good for us. So we decide to keep, because we're on the draw. We can definitely draw that third land pretty decently. We have a pretty decent chance of drawing it. They play a tap land, which is good for us. We draw a third land. And I thought for a second, do I want to play with fire? Do I want to Kamano? Kamano makes more sense, because it allows us to be a little bit aggressive, even though we're behind turn-wise, because it allows our opponent to definitely play something or leave mana open. And they leave mana open. So yet again, I feel like there's a counter spell here, right? You have 2 mana open, you don't do anything. It's a blue-white deck. So what do you think initially? Counter spell. The benefit of us not doing anything, playing something, is we get a +1/+1 counter. But it doesn't matter if the creature's going to get countered, so the trigger's wasted anyway. So I'm like, might as well, you know what? We'll say go. The smart play is to say go, make sure we have mana open to do whatever we want to do. Allows us to have more options. They play a third land. They play Ledger Shredder. Okay, good card. Definitely something that is good for them. They pass. And at this point, if they have a Spell Pierce, possibly we could have, play with fire, set up our top card. We draw a nice Sunrise Cavalier. We decide to go ahead and Brutal Cathar, because this is going to force a play out of them if they want to protect their Shredder here. And I decide to take the Shredder if they don't want to protect it. And then this is where they play Slip Out the Back. They pump their creature, but it's phased out, and we get in for 2 points of damage. Good for us. Nothing really happens, I think, on their turn. They look like they play Security Bypass. Good card for them, because it allows them to connive every time it attacks, which that means they can dig for cards they need to kind of protect their creatures or kind of prevent things from happening. They discard, a card that's going to draw them a bunch of cards, or it's a land, and they have 2 mana open yet again. So overall, very interesting spot to be in, right? So in this position, they have 2 mana open. We thought on turn 1 they had some sort of counter spell. So, yet again, let's not play into the counter spell, because they could still have that same counter spell, because we didn't see anything discarded that is that counter spell. So I could have jumped the Sunrise Cavalier, but I decided to do Bloodthirsty instead, just for the fact that, it's still a pretty good, creature. We can hit him for 6 points of damage immediately. And we're going to swing in, because this now forces to get, again, another play. And they don't have any blockers, so they go to 11. So definitely, yet again, we're still in a good position. We have 2 play with fires. We can really kind of target a lot of things. I play Ledger Shredder number 2. All right, that's definitely, an issue for the most part. But at this point, might as well, get hit for 3. They connive. We're slowly seeing their hand that they're getting rid of. Does it pump the Ledger Shredder? Do they keep a land? And they get rid of a card that is a connive card that gives target creature double strike. And I go ahead and I decide to play with fire. If they counter it, they waste their mana, and now they don't have any open mana. We hit for 2. We want the land, because now this allows us to have probably that Jawari Disruption they're just sitting on mana-wise to kind of allow them to kind of be able to counter any creature. We played Brutal Cathar. It's out of Jawari's range, and I decided to be the aggressor. As much as they have the 4/6, I want to take their 1/3, because if I get rid of their 1/3, then you know, I can swing in for 6 points of damage and they can't do anything about it. So they're looking at our cards and they're kind of reading what they got going on here. Yet again, you know, definitely an interesting spot to be in here. I guess they're thinking about what cards they want to phase. They phase out some cards. All right, they discard, you know, another draw spell to be able to do that for 3. That's fine. We still swing in for 2. They're down to 7. Good spot for us because they're only at 7. And this is the turn where I know they probably want to play that, you know, that thing's going to give them double spell because they're at 7 life, or double strike, I should say. Because they're at 7 life. They want to try to finish out the game now as quickly as possible. And we're going to play with fire them because we want to make sure that we can, you know, kill them regardless of even if they phase creatures out. And they only have 2 cards in hand. So definitely we're in a good spot regardless. It connives. So yet again, they're looking for things to grow their creature. They get a card that gives target creature +1/+1 in vigilance. And now we're at 6. So this is definitely, you know, a position that we need to finish them in whatever spot we are in. So they get rid of cards that give protection. They play a land, and they only have 1 card left, but still have 2 mana open. So I decided to play with fire yet again. And yet again, they have to think about whether or not they want to counter, which I still think that's what they have, or they want to let it go. So I decided to play Sunrise Cavalier. I have 1 mana open, and they only have 2 mana here. So, you know, they counter it or they do something, and we essentially have lethal on board, but they can't do enough to the board to actually, if they face things out, to eliminate us from killing them in lethal, because everything we have is haste. They only have the card that phases, so we're actually able to swing in perfectly fine, and that was the reason why there was stick, because there was that card that they can pay 1 mana for and discard X in order to phase. And we get our 4th win, which is definitely good for us. We get 4 wins in our event. And then the next game we end up losing, so we only go 4-3. But I figured those 4 games are actually, even though we won, were definitely very interesting. The other games really weren't as interesting. I got against another Esper aggro deck. We really didn't have the same kind of, you know, stuff to kind of keep up. We kind of got land flooded, which kind of made us fall behind. Game 1, kind of the same thing. Like I said, a lot of our deck was very land heavy in the games we lost, and then the games that we won, we actually still had pretty good overall cards in our deck. But, you know, going 4-3 is definitely still not bad. All right, and we are back. So overall, not too bad today here in Arena. We did end up doing our event. We did pretty decent as we got, I believe, more wins than we did losses. Ended up with, you know, 300 or so gems, now at 1345. We also got 1 additional pack of Nuka Penna, which will open up, which we're guaranteed our 1 rare wild card, as well as whatever we open here, which we got ourselves a getaway card. But overall, you know, still not bad. Getting our progress with our overall uncommon and rare wild cards. We still have 1 common, 18 uncommon, 1 rare, and 23.4 vault progress. And that's just because we started this challenge after really the Mastery Pass rotated out for you know, Streets of New Capenna, so we've just been really opening a lot of Baldur's Gate, which is not helping us in that regard. Other than that, we got 6 wins on the day, 2 of them coming from ranked play, 2 of them, and the rest coming from the actual event, which is definitely good for us. We got a little bit of progress in our overall ranking here at Platinum Tier 4. I only played enough games to get 2 progress and really completed the quest to just kind of allow myself to be able to then play the event. I didn't really play a ton of games. I think I started off really rocky. The deck was really mana heavy in the first 2 games, in the sense that we just drew a lot of lands and not really much to do with those lands. And that's the one unfortunate part when you play an aggro deck. If you get land flooded, the deck does kind of, you know, falls flat because you just need to keep on putting that pressure against your opponent. But, you know, yet again, I think it was a 50% day in the ranked ladder. And I think in the event itself, we were at an overall percentage of probably about, I think we went 4-3, so, you know, just a little bit above 50%, probably at like 59, well, 4-3, 7, I don't know, you know, it's somewhere around like a little like 55 to like 60%, which is not that bad. But with that being said, you know, yet again, you know, we're just slowly grinding up our currency. I feel like this is kind of that routine. If you're a free-to-play player, this is kind of what you want to do. after you create your first like good deck, is to kind of slowly build up that currency. The one thing I may want to do a little bit more of as we kind of get towards the tail end of this challenge as well is kind of switching up the deck. Now that we have a second kind of deck that I feel like is in a pretty decent spot, it may not be fully you know, together, but I really want to dive into my Rakdos Anvil deck just a little bit more, just because now we have some, you know, pretty decent cards in here. You know, we have 2 Obnixiluses, we have 2 Meathook Massacres. And I even think at a budget value, this deck is still, you know, feels overall pretty decent from that regard. You know, it's still, you know, definitely a lot of cards that are commons and uncommons that still make this deck feel really, really good. There are cards that are going to rotate out of standard that are in this deck, like, you know, your Deadly Disputes and really just the Pathway land. I think everything else in the deck itself is actually from Kamigawa and newer, so it's definitely a deck that works really well even in a post-rotation standard. But with that being said, you know, that's kind of where I think I'm going to lean into tomorrow with tomorrow's video. Is I'm probably going to play Rakdos Anvil, maybe kind of see how it performs overall in the ladder, just because I feel like, you know, it's definitely one of those things that since we have a second deck that is like fairly well put together, we can, you know, experiment a little bit more on the ranked ladder. And worst case scenario, what we lose a little bit of progress points for the most part, but we're still going to be in platinum, which is definitely going to be a benefit even if we lose you know, games overall. The other thing to note is that when we play the Rakdos Anvil deck compared to our Boros aggro deck, is that the games will definitely take a lot longer. Rakdos Anvil is definitely a grindy deck. I actually played one in the event and managed to win when I'm not really sure if my opponent really just didn't want to grind it out or not, because I attacked in with a creature. I may actually do coverage of that game just because I don't know why my opponent they just took the damage unless they by mistake hit no blocks. But definitely kind of an interesting game overall. But with that being said, guys, if you like the video, hit that like button. Definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, you want to post new videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Just want to give a special shout out to the channel members here on my YouTube channel. You can also become a channel member yourself down below the video, hitting that join button. It definitely helps out a lot, and I just appreciate you guys for your support.